This is the Tom Anderson Show, broadcasting live from the KVNT studios, 7 to 9 a.m., Monday through Friday.
We are back, and it's always a pleasure to have Adam Holz, who's the director of Plugged In, a part of Focus on the Family in the great state of Colorado Springs. And Adam and his team, they do the heavy lifting. They review movies, TV, music, games, books, YouTube channels, you name it. You can donate to them and support them. Follow them at pluggedin.com. We have the Barbie movie this weekend launching, also Oppenheimer. I want to talk about the Barbie movie. I was talking earlier in the show about growing up in East Anchorage here in Alaska and had neighbors, Joanne Meehan and her daughters, Sean and Shannon. They had Barbies. We played G.I. Joes, Big Jims. Those were the good old days. Mattel and Hasbro fighting against each other, and that was good for all of us kids. We were the benefactors. But Barbie was benign, cute, fun. My friends, girlfriends loved them. Fast forward, now we have a Barbie movie, and I was hoping it would be non-controversial. It wouldn't be woke, kind of Care Bearish, and apparently it is not. It's opening this weekend. It could make $90 million to $150 million. It's going to be a big deal. What do you think, Adam?
It's not Care Bears, and it's certainly not a movie for kids. You know, this is a movie that has a ton of layers to it, and even talking through the basic plot. The basic plot is Barbie lives in Barbie land. Everything's pretty much perfect there. It's kind of like Everything is Awesome, the Lego movie.
Like the Holz family. Like the Holz home.
Right.
Perfect.
Well, yeah, probably not. We don't have that kind of time. Anyway, women run the show. They're in every position of power, and the Kens mostly just hang out on the beach. They don't really contribute anything to society. So fast forward, for a number of reasons, Barbie and Ken end up in the real world. I won't bother you with the plot dynamics there. And Ken finds out that in the real world, the patriarchy rules. And they actually use the word patriarchy over and over and over in this movie. And
in other words, women are the bosses, women rule, he's a subordinate, and it's sending a message.
Right, that's the way it is in Barbie land, but he comes to the real world and he's like, oh, the men are rewarded here, and he sort of becomes intoxicated by this idea of patriarchy, which is, you know, to be fair, presented in a very satirized, you know, exaggerated stereotype kind of way. But none of the men here are depicted in a very flattering light, except the one guy who is depicted as being an ally to the female Barbies is pretty androgynous and pretty not Ken, if you will. Anyway, Ken goes back to Barbie land and bamboozles all of the females and brainwashes them and takes over, and Barbie and a few others are left to combat the Kens. So it becomes this sort of...
So it's not fun, Barbie and Ken, like in the narrative when they were created by Mattel. It's not like that.
Well,
that's too bad.
Sort of. Ken wants to be Barbie's boyfriend, but she's not interested in him. And so in the end, Ken comes around and says, yeah, sorry, I was a jerk and I shouldn't have done that. But for most of the movie, the message that's communicated are that men are patriarchal idiots. And to be fair, again, trying to be fair here, there are also strong messages about the ways that sexism and chauvinism have really damaged women. So that's a positive message.
Yep, that's fair.
I think that this is one that will be very much received well by women, and I think most men who see it, or maybe many men who see it, are going to feel like, wait a minute, we're being caricatured here in a way that I think reinforces all kinds of really bad stereotypes. So I feel like in trying to deal with the problem of sexism, it kind of just completely reverses it, and it demeans and treats men poorly. And so you wouldn't get that from the trailer. It's all bright and happy and fun. But this is a pretty deeply political movie, and I think it's one that after we get through the first weekend and word gets out on that, there's going to be more conversation about that.
What about the audience? Where did you see, what theater, I assume in Colorado, and what was the vibe? Who attended?
Well, I was at a special sort of pseudo-public screening that it wasn't just completely open to the public, but it wasn't a press-only screening. And there were, as you would expect, a lot of women there. This is a movie that is made by women for women. I mean, I think they would say, guys, don't worry about being critical of this because this movie isn't for you anyway. So that was, the main thing I would observe. At the screening I saw, there were a lot of trans people there. There were a lot of guys wearing dresses, and they really loved the movie. And so I was a little bit taken aback by that. That kind of caught me unexpectedly, but that was who was at the screening I went to.
Yeah, wow. I'm disappointed, and I was excited for all the folks that finally remember growing up with Barbie, either as buddies like I was with Sean and Shannon.
Right.
You didn't hear my story, but they were delightful friends. And I had the Big Jims and the G.I. Joes. Or if it was simply the ladies out there, professionals, homemakers, awesome women who we adore when we see them playing with Barbies and collecting them and giving them to their granddaughters, to their children. I think there's just something notable about it in American culture and the ethos. I was discussing in an earlier segment about the competition between Mattel and Hasbro. Hasbro launching Big Jim, Mattel then does the, or vice versa, does the G.I. Joe. I forget which one in manufacturing, but ultimately a lot of competition. Barbie moved the dial on female-centric toys, and that element, there was the movie Air about the Nike shoes and Michael Jordan. Yep. I think, and there was the movie Tetris. I think they could have made a cool movie about Barbie and about the history and the maker, but instead they did this.
Well, and actually, weirdly enough, the history comes through in the end. And the creator of Barbie actually, it's Rhea Perlman. It's not the actual creator, but she's represented here. In the last 15 minutes or so is a pretty interesting part of the movie where Rhea Perlman's character talks about why she created Barbie, what her hopes were. And I'm like, oh, that's actually super nuanced. And that was the part of the movie that I resonated with the most. I'm like, why did the rest of it have to be so black and white?
Well,
and so I think when we talk about sexism as a zero-sum game...
Agreed. Ruth Handler created and named it after her daughter. That's why I said Barbara.
Yes.
After her daughter Barbara.
No, her daughter
this was in
Barbara.
March 1959 it was launched. So you're talking 50s she created this doll. But look at the evolution. I mean, it's a pretty iconic toy.
Absolutely it is. And I actually really... there were parts that I appreciated. The part that drove me crazy is, why do we have to demonize men and caricature them and demean them? I'm like, I think you could have told this story without doing it at men's expense. And again, I'm sure that there will be people who say, oh, it's just I'm just a conservative crying about men being demeaned. Get over it. Okay, I can receive that. That's fine. But it made it a much less accessible movie for me. But again, they would say they didn't make it for 50-year-old white guys. This is a movie by women, for women. I just hate having those stereotypes reinforced. And especially, Tom, we're already in a time of such division over every possible thing we could divide over. And this feels like a divisive movie, not a unifying one.
Well, that's where Adam does the heavy lifting. Again, pluggedin.com. You can check his review out. And in fact, it's the headline of the website and their homepage right now. I appreciate the fact, Adam, that you assist us with this analysis. Folks, Barbie launches today, July 21st, across the nation. And it's something to consider. I mean, The Guardian out of the UK is even writing about this movie. Senators like U.S. Senators like Marsha Blackburn, Ted Cruz out of Texas, they claim a cartoon map in the movie depicts the 9-dash line, which, of course, China uses to assert control over the South China Sea. And they're arguing that the movie is supposed to include something with non-controversial maps, and it's not family friendly, it's gender affirming and pitting men against women, female empowerment, is that a bad thing? It's your choice. Is it a dangerous message? You'll have to think about that. I want you to be the judge, okay? I want you to check out the flick, whether this weekend or next week. Let me know your opinion. We're going to make a YouTube video of this. You're probably watching this interview on YouTube, Tom Anderson Show channel. Put in the comments what you think. And Adam, thanks for your time. Barbie releases today. What are your thoughts?